Hello everybody, time for the next video in the series. Sorry again, I've been really busy, but I'm getting these in when I can. You should all now be, by the time you're watching this, hopefully, on your Christmas break, or hopefully using this as a revision resource near your exam times. It's important over Christmas for those in year 11 especially to do two things: to revise, spend some time looking through, but also, I'm not being funny, have a break, okay? Give yourself that chance to be with family. Give yourself the chance to get away from your books just for a moment, because that's as important, if not more so, than studying. If you overkill yourself, if you burn yourself out, you're going to be no good to yourself in the exams. So stay on top of it. I would not do nothing, but genuinely just set yourself a couple of hours a day to do some work, and the rest of it, enjoy to relax. Okay, that's where you catch up on your sleep. That's where you catch up on your, seeing friends and stuff outside of the classroom. This video, I'm going to do a brief overall summary of changing economic world. Now, for you guys in year 10, you would not have done this yet, so it's kind of a spoiler for you. You can use this one to kind of get ahead if you want to, or use this one and come back to it later. For those of you in year 11, this is the first topic I'm doing these videos on that I actually haven't taught you. So this is one that you would have been taught by your other teacher. Doesn't mean I can't help. Doesn't mean this can't be useful to you. So I'm hoping this goes hand in hand with the other teachers' lessons that you're doing with them. Okay. So first of all, changing economic world. Like I always say to you, what does that mean? Well, it's the changing, so the going up and down, economy, so money, of the world. How countries are becoming richer or poorer. Okay. And that's happening all over the world. Countries are becoming richer on average in terms of inflation, in terms of people making more money, but there's also a gap, and that's kind of the key to this topic, really. So how do you measure development? When I say a country like the UK is more developed than where I am in Cambodia right now, well, ultimately there's different things. There's life expectancy, there's GNI, there's GDP per capita. I would make sure that you know many of these different factors. So GNI is gross national income, so overall income. GNI per person is the income per person, averaged out. GDP, gross domestic product, the total amount of goods and services a country makes. The richer a country is, the more money they make from goods and services. Life expectancy, to be fair, I taught you that one, you guys, in year 9. In terms of how long a person lives on average, how long, literacy rate, the percentage of people that can read in the country, infant mortality rate, if that's higher, you're less developed because your healthcare is worse, all those kind of things. Now that's how you measure development. Now ultimately, not everywhere is the same, is it? The infant mortality rate will be higher in Cambodia than the UK. Why is that? Well, ultimately there's been uneven development. So in terms of healthcare, in terms of money, in terms of education, literacy rate, for example. So all these things have causes. So what has caused uneven development? So that might be historical reasons, that might be political reasons, war, conflict, natural disasters that can cause uneven development. Maybe it's through TNCs, things like that. Maybe it's through investment. Maybe it's through poverty. Maybe it's through corruption. Lots of different reasons, so make sure you know the causes as well. I would do a flashcard on the measures of development, so GNI, literacy rate, infant mortality rate, and I would do a flashcard on the causes of uneven development. Okay? I would do a third flashcard for revision on the consequences of uneven development. So, for example, we've looked at the causes there, what has caused uneven development, and then the consequences would be what that means. What does that mean for that country? You could say, for example, inequality in healthcare, difference in education rates, job shortages, or people having to immigrate. If a country has, not enough doctors, for example, they have to get them from somewhere else. If the qualifications aren't that good, if the literacy and education isn't that good. So look at the consequences. We'll do a video on this later, but the consequences of uneven development. Not enough money, so poverty, starvation, famine, these can all be coming at the extreme. And then you can look back in categorization as something that I have taught you in year 9. If you're in 9 blue or 9 red back in the day, this would be the DTM. So how you categorize countries, how you know how developed they are. So if you remember stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4 and stage 5. So stage 1, I'm coming up here, I'm developing, but I'm very low down. High death rate, low birth rate. And it goes up and levels out and goes down at the end, if you remember that, with the birth rate, death rate and the population size. That's how you can categorize a country. They have a high death rate and a low birth rate, they're categorized as a 1 or 2 country. If they have a high birth rate and a low death rate, you're looking at 4 or 5. So you know there's a gap. So you have to look at ways then of reducing that gap to make the world a fairer and better place. So how can you reduce the gap in development? Well, ultimately, one way that Cambodia makes its money is using its natural resources. How is the money from myself getting here? Well, it's tourism. So tourism is a way of making money and closing the development gap. Maybe it's through aid, maybe it's through foreign investment. Maybe London could look at this and think, wow, what an opportunity to make more money in the longer term. Let's invest in this area, let's do it up, make it nicer, improve the quality of education, healthcare, etc. And a country that does a lot of that, by the way, is China. So in Vietnam, there's evidence of China investing a lot of money in roads and hotels to make the area better, even though it's not its own country, but in the longer term, hoping to make that money back. So that's like, foreign direct investment, FDI. So yeah, a good example you might be taught, because I'm not quite sure what case studies your teachers have chosen, by the way, would be tourism in Kenya. So Kenya is a country that, isn't the richest in the world, but through an enhanced tourism program has developed its economy and made more money in places like the capital city, for example. Then you can look at managing these disparities in development. So how can you manage these? How can you make sure healthcare isn't bad? How can you make sure education does improve? That might be investment again, that might be more teachers. It might be a change in approach, for example. And a case study that I think you would have been taught, but if you haven't, then take this with a pinch of salt. I mean, by the way, in the comments, let me know if this is your case study or not. That'd be fantastically useful for me. But Nigeria is normally the case study that gets used in this example. So I know that's the one I taught the year 11s before you. So Nigeria, how do I start revising that? Like you do with Brazil, like you do with the UK in urban change. Where is it? Why is it important locally, regionally, nationally and internationally? So where is Nigeria? It's in Africa, relatively central Africa. Why is it important? Well, it's a big economy. A lot of people live there. In terms of Africa, it's one of the largest amounts of money coming in. It's responsible for one of the largest amounts of money coming in. Then we're going to look at in a future video about how it's changed over time. So in essence, how it's going through the DTM, how it's going from a stage 1 to a stage 2 to potentially a stage 3 country, and how it maybe plans to go forward into a stage 4 or 5 country. Then you look at your specific evidence. So for a 9 marker, so whether it's TNCs and how they're working there. Again, I'll do a future video on this, but something like, for example, Shell. Shell is a TNC. It moved into Nigeria. Why did it do that? Well, there's oil there to exploit and a market to make money on. What are the positives? What are the negatives? Well, jobs, that's a positive. More money in tax, so positive. Multiplier effect, positive. However, the environment didn't really benefit. It actually got affected negatively. Negative. So there'll be a whole other video on that going forward. But you're looking at Nigeria specifically. You're looking at how the TNCs in that area specifically affected that country. How is aid being used, if it is? How is trade being conducted? Is it being done fairly? Fair trade, for example, fair trade crops, or is there corruption? And that's the focus, for a 9 marker or a 6 marker, whatever. Nigeria is most likely going to be your case study, unless you look at the other one. We'll come on to that in a minute. And then you look at how ultimately all these things, the aid, the trade, the TNCs, have they improved the quality of life? Have they closed the development gap? Have they changed the economy? Changing economic world? And normally what you'll find, a little bit like in Brazil, is that the economy has improved, but at what cost? Normally to the environment, okay? Again, if you look around where I am now, for example, this would have all been natural, and it is very beautiful, but human development, like these buildings here, for example, have affected the environment. There would have been trees here before. So if you cut those trees down, yes, you make a bar to make more money or a hotel to make more money, but ultimately at what cost? Maybe damaging the environment, maybe damaging the soil, maybe damaging the wildlife. Well, there's definitely mosquitoes here, let me tell you that. And then you look at your other case study. So it's very handy that in terms of the urban issues, we look at Brazil and we look at the UK. Well, in Changing Economic World, you also look at the UK. It is a country that you live in after all. So yeah, the UK, how, and then you do the same thing. How is the UK important? Well, you learn about that in urban change. How is it important nationally, internationally, government, tourism, all that stuff. And then you look at the same things as Nigeria. So you kind of match it up, just do a copy and paste job. So, how has the economy changed? How has it gone through the DTM over time? Why has it done so? The Industrial Revolution being a big part of that. Immigration, changing it now potentially. How has the economy improved? How has the environment been affected, potentially negatively? Then you look at the whole stuff to do with greenbelt versus building on the greenbelt, greenfield versus brownfield developments. So are we building houses now on the countryside, or are we building them on land that used to be owned by like factories and stuff? To be fair, that's very much in the news at the moment. If you want to watch the most recent episode of Question Time on BBC, they had the discussion about this, whether we should just build the houses on the countryside ultimately. How has rural areas changed? How have rural areas changed, I should say? Potentially people living in more rural areas and commuting with trains being faster and easier to get. As the population's increasing, what does that mean for our cities and towns? What does it mean for our infrastructure? If there's more people, you have to build more trains, you have to build more schools, you have to build more houses, you have to build more hospitals. At the moment, you have to build a house in the UK every 2 minutes just to cope with increasing population demands. Also, we've got an aging population. What does that mean? In terms of more people being dependent. These people are not working if you're living towards 80 or 90 years old. Therefore, the retirement age has had to be increased. Now, if this is all a bit much, don't stress. I will do another video on these separately. I just wanted you to have something before the new year. I wanted you to have something before the new year that could help you revise this, at least with a brief understanding. And then we'll go into more details through January. I'll come on to that at the end if you don't mind. So then you've got the last two things for the UK anyway, is the north-south divide. So the case study I taught the year 11s before you, so this might be different for you, but it might ring a bell, is Cambridgeshire versus the Outer Hebrides. So how is the north of Scotland different to the city of Cambridge in terms of education, in terms of healthcare? It's not just that the UK is different to Nigeria, it's that some parts of the UK are different to other parts of the UK. The south normally, because it's nearer London, getting more money than the forgotten north. There's other evidence for this in terms of countryside versus cities, south and north, so have a look at those two. Again, we'll look at that later. And then, how in the UK and the wider world, how is the UK in terms of comparative to other countries like Nigeria, but also to the United States, Japan, China, etc.? How is that in terms of the economy? How is it improving? What way is it going? You can start to bring in Brexit here, maybe. You can start to bring in how the UK has changed over time in terms of colonialism. You can look at the Commonwealth. The fact that the Queen of King of England is also the King of Australia. That's because of some historical factors. And then you can also look at the war and the impact on that over time. And impacts of other wars around the world too. So that's a brief summary. 14 minutes, I'm on the clock now. 14-minute summary of Changing Economic World. Two things before I leave you. Well, three. One, I will do a more detailed video on each different category here. I'll do a detailed video on Nigeria. I'll do a detailed video on London. But please, 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 I gotta wait for that. Please, someone, anyone, in the comments, tell me if this is your case study, if you are doing Nigeria, okay? If you're not, I'll research the country you are doing. But if you are doing Nigeria, I can do a full detailed video on that for you guys in the next couple of 2-3 weeks or so after the Christmas and New Year. The second thing, it's just as a long-term plan for you. I will make sure, this is more towards the year 11s by the way, I'll make sure that all the videos for the entire content, including past paper practice, including mock preparation, including top tips, including resource management, I'll make sure that they are all done by March. Okay, every video on this channel, all the topics, all the content will be done by March. That includes exam 3. The only thing that can't be done before then is your resource booklet in terms of exam 3, because that doesn't get released till April anyway. But in terms of all the content from the topics, I'll make sure it's on here. So if you aren't looking at revising hazards now, go back and watch the first videos. I'm like one of those proper YouTubers now. Go back and watch my earlier videos. But on a serious note, all the topics will be covered by March. So you'll have at least a full list of content, a full list, an encyclopedia, definition, whatever it may be, of all the stuff you've done so far, and all the stuff that is going to come up in the exam, or could come up in the exam, whether it be sustainability, whether it be urban issues, whether it be living world. It will all be there by the end of March. Okay, that gives you at least all of April and May, and then some of June maybe, to revise from these videos as an extra revision resource. And the third thing, please, 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 have a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Okay, I'm still thinking about you guys. I really want you to do well. I still intend to come back and see you, and I hope to see some really, really strong performances across the board. Any questions, as always, please let me know. I didn't get any submissions for that 9 marker or 4 marker yet. My email address is always open. Check back the earlier videos, or in the comments, ask me any questions. I'll always answer them as best I can. Always good to hear from you guys, and I'll see you soon. Take care, Happy New Year, and Merry Christmas.